Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Launchmetrics webinar. And we would like to thank you all for joining us today. And my name is Carolina, and with me today is the Managing Director of APAC Launchmetrics, Kim Leitzes. And today we're going to talk about building a brand and marketing plan with high ROI. We will have a short question and answer session at the end of our presentation. So please feel free to ask us anything during that time. Without further ado, I will leave it to our speaker, Kim. Hi, Kim.
Thanks, Carolina. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you all had lunch. As Carolina mentioned, I'm the APAC Managing Director for Launchmetrics, based in Hong Kong. I've currently spent the last 12 years working with fashion, beauty, and luxury brands, primarily on their China marketing strategies, but in the recent years across the APAC markets outside of China as well. And really excited about the content we have to share with you today. Please feel free throughout today's webinar to make it interactive. You can drop in questions in the chat, and we'll most likely answer them at the end of the presentation. But as things pop into your mind, please don't hesitate. So the reason why we put together today's presentation is we often are helping brands answer the questions of, how do I grow my business? Obviously, in today's market with economic uncertainty and consumption patterns, how to do that more efficiently has been very much top of mind. And at Launchmetrics, we're very much in helping using multiple data and tools to build and enhance brand performance. So what that means is today's focus is a bit on very specific, like which social media channels and marketing investments to make. But as a broader company, we look at how brands perform for their events management, to their samples management, particularly for the fashion and luxury industry. And then across other sectors like beauty, it's very much looking to the digital investments and how to optimize those campaigns and solutions. So globally, we have over 1,200 customers, ranging from large brands to indie brands as well. And we work with a number of industry partners across fashion and beauty. And our company as a whole, our software product, we're tracking over 600,000, what we call the voices that matter. So that includes celebrities, influencers, print and media accounts, as well as partners that are important to your brand. So partners, particularly in the APAC region, can mean travel retailers, for example. And so that's kind of an overall view of where we stand in our perspective globally and within the APAC region across many, many languages. We're tracking over 4,000 brands. So again, following established players as well as up-and-comers and I would say even like direct-to-consumer, digitally native brands are what is on our radar when we think and do our benchmarking and talk about what's working and what's growing. So as a whole, our business, Launchmetrics, has two parts. One is the launch part, which is helping digitize and internal processes, everything from samples management to event software and managing your PR and communication resources. And then on the other side is the metrics part, which is today's primary focus, which is how we actually use the data to benchmark to understand what's working and what's not, and to help you answer the question when you're making that marketing plan, whether it's on an annual basis, quarterly, or even monthly for some markets. You're only looking 30 to 60 days ahead. How much should that investment be, right? And so really sharing our approach, because obviously for every brand, there's a different level of investment, and really showing you our methodology is the objective for today's session. So one of the most important aspects of how we help brands with their marketing plans is using the concept of media impact value, which is MIV for short. So media impact value assigns a dollar of value in your currency to every post, video, interaction, or article that mentions a brand. So what that means is we have a few dozen factors. Some are quantitative, right? So quantitative attributes, meaning like, okay, how many likes and comments did a post get? So that might be the engagement, right, of a post or video article. It might be media rates themselves. So we will look across whether it's print media, advertising rates on social media to assign a relative value weighting to those posts. Also, there are things that come into mind, such as the activeness of an account. What is the frequency of posting? So that also indicates a certain amount of quality. So for example, if a post is denser in terms of maybe a post will mention 10 brands, but one is about 50% of the content, for example, that would have a higher weighting. So those are examples of what we consider the quantitative attributes. And then we have what are qualitative attributes that feed into MIV, which are what is the relevancy of this particular account. So if you are maybe you're an agency. So let's say your client is a beauty brand, but an influencer is more of a fashion influencer, that would have a different weighting for the beauty brand client versus your fashion client, by way of example. So qualitative is both the source authority of like, is this particular voice, are they pertinent, are they highly relevant to the product category? And then you also have content quality. So content quality very much depends by platform. In the case of for certain ones, particularly video content, right? This is very much a work in progress, but one of the really complex things that our data science team works on is in a 2-minute video, how much of that content is actually, really relevant to the brand mentioned, right? And so we use audio text transcription on platforms like Douyin in China, for example. And of course, at YouTube, you have transcription, which is provided. So you have that more readily available to do that analysis. So MIV in short is a benchmarking metric. And so what that allows us to do is to look into where brands are investing their marketing. And then from there, you pair that with your industry knowledge. You have various partners and agencies, e-commerce platforms who provide you the data and market share information to know which brands are growing well and succeeding at a sales performance level. So once you have that understanding of within your segment, which are your competitors and who are the fast growing brands, then you can dive into, okay, based on MIV, how are they investing? So I'm going to show you some examples of that. So just in simplistic terms, sometimes it's easier to visualize MIV when there's an example in front of you. So here's an example on the left of an influencer. She has over 13 million who saw this Douyin video, for example. But with that reach, there's a lower engagement rate of less than 1.5%. So that MIV would be around like $86,000 US. And then we have the example. So the influencer was posting about Prada. And then we have an example from Prada's owned media account that's on the red platform, Xiaohongshu. And so you can see that the MIV is about less than half, about 40,000. And so the reach is a lot less, but the engagement is much higher. So as you can see, there's a relationship where it's not entirely just about the number of followers, but it's heavily weighted more towards engagement, as well as the importance and weighting of that platform when it comes to the whole marketing funnel from building brand awareness all the way down to purchase intent. So in this example, the TikTok example, where it is much higher on the build like awareness front versus when someone is actually on the red platform and they're actually doing more research, going to more specific products, and that's kind of reflected in how we do the MIV weighting. To give you a broader perspective and really understand, okay, how is this relevant to MIV? Like, how do we think about it just from a big picture? How does MIV look by region? And today's focus is obviously in APAC. The reason I love to show this slide is to really understand, okay, for let's say the fashion industry, right? The largest markets, it starts with the US and then China, and then the other regions as well. So in beauty, it's the same, where you have it's like US, China, Japan, etc. So those splits are generally reflective with when we look at MIV. So it is although MIV is not meant to be any indication of revenue or some sort of sales correlation, it is generally effective in terms of like market share, in terms of like what's the correlation between social performance and media performance, and what that means in terms of that cross-regional split. And one of the things we've noticed, I guess it's not much of a surprise for most people in the marketing space, is video continues to be the fastest growing source for online discovery. So in China, for example, influencers and online to offline platforms account for 15 to 30% of media budgets. And for, I'd say, smaller brands, it's much, much higher, could be as high as 80%. And markets in Southeast Asia, you're seeing that e-commerce is very much the top channel for online discovery. So the multitude of e-commerce marketplaces means that consumers are shopping 2 times as much on online platforms versus back a couple of years ago. So that has very much grown. And so you'll see that as this trend continues, there's 2 challenges for brands. One is video content is actually harder to track. So it's actually easy to underestimate the investment you should be making on video content, right? It's much harder to track all the live streams and also gauge and assess that quality of content is much harder. So that's one challenge. The second challenge is obviously with the continuing growth of social commerce, right? So from social content direct to buy, right? Whether it's TikTok and buying directly on e-commerce, that means that the way our marketing teams are structured, where sometimes some teams have e-commerce, right, and performance versus branding and social community engagement. So as those lines are blurred and as they have to work more closely together, this really is a reflection of how your teams and how your strategy should be thought out. Oftentimes we, parse it out between, okay, this is what we'll invest for brand building. This is what we'll do for performance marketing. But increasingly those have to work in tandem. So that's why having a broader look, being able to use something like MIV as a benchmark is super helpful when you're looking across the marketing stack. And again, just to sort of give you an idea of how this plays out, and these are kind of large established brands in the market, so because it's taught by MIV, what it looks like in the case of, say, beauty and fashion, when you're kind of splitting between, say, the premium to prestige brands versus, say, more mass market brands. And again, you have a mix here. On the beauty side, you have both skincare and color cosmetics, and even Vaseline, which would be more of a mass CPG brand, and then you also have prestige brands such as like Lancome versus something that is a more accessible price point, such as Perfect Diary. Within the fashion side, again, this is combining both luxury brands as well as fast fashion and even sportswear fitness brands, one of the fashion sportswear brands like Anta and Adidas here. So just to give you a broad stroke of what this means. And if you actually look at MIV for each of these brands, it is pretty reflective of their global revenue. So, if a case for some luxury brands where China is 30+% of their revenue globally, MIV actually generally reflects that, to give you a sense when you're thinking of broader planning. So what do we see happening in 2023? So to show how we actually answer the questions of, okay, I'm trying to decide how much to invest this year. Where should I be doing it, right? And so one of the things we look at is the voice approach. So the 5 voices we look at, first is media, which is this darker blue in the chart here. Orange is influencers, or KOLs, or key opinion leaders. So I may use those words interchangeably. Celebrities, which is the lighter blue in the bar charts. Purple, which is partners. The partners it could be your travel retail partners. If you're in the beauty space, it could be a multi-brand retailer like Sephora. In the fashion space, it could be the multi-brand e-commerce platform like Farfetch or Net-a-Porter, for example. And then you have owned media, which is your brand's own social accounts in market. So when we looked at APAC, we looked at all countries, including China. And so what we have here is a sample of beauty brands, both some are like large and some, large established, been in market for many years, and newer entrants as well. So what's interesting is, if I call out some of the stronger outliers here, you'll see like Shumore, where they've put 80% of MIV is from influencers. Right. And so there's pretty wide range, because for Shiseido, it's about 39%. So that band of 39% versus 80% effectiveness with influencers is what you're seeing. Generally, media still, is kind of in the, say, 10 to 40% range, and most are in the 20%. And Shumore, which is putting a lot more into influencer, is only 10% of their MIV is coming from media. So media being, print media, online media, et cetera. So another thing I would point out is something that stands out is La Roche-Posay here. They are doing 18% of their MIV from their owned accounts. So really growing their community through their own social channels. This is something where it very much varies by market and very much varies by platform. But overall, this number kind of stood out when we looked into this. So when you are thinking about, if you're an agency and you're thinking about your client's marketing plan, or if you're in-house at a brand, when we work with brands to determine how do we even begin to do this, it's not as simple as just looking at direct competitors. Oftentimes we find that competitors can function very similarly. And what you're looking for is thinking about who are the highest performing brands in your region or market, right? And from there, it may not necessarily be the same price point, and it may not necessarily be the same product. And the reason for that is sometimes innovation isn't in your sector. Now, obviously beauty is highly innovative, but when we look at other categories, whether it could be like watches or more traditional industries, it's actually really helpful to look at newer brands, whether they're more e-commerce oriented, more digital, to really understand what kind of investments need to be made. So ask yourself to start doing your marketing plan, which fast-growing brands do you admire in terms of their growth, right? And that is one of the things that when we're doing the strategy, would want to understand, on top of seeing what your direct competitors are doing. So that's one thing. For very specific markets, like if we take China, for example, we will, let's say we're working with, a prestige skincare brand. We will also look at what maybe some Chinese domestic brands are doing that may not compete directly in the same price point or product category, but understanding that the brands who spend 100% of their energy and marketing dollars in a specific market are doing the most experimentation, most innovation in terms of marketing strategy. So that's the second thing we ask is, if by market, by country, are there brands that are very specific that you should be benchmarking against? So that's another key aspect that we do when doing this analysis. And this is a screenshot, just to be clear. This is a screenshot from our Insights product. And so, of the 4,000 brands we track, this is just a sample of when we're looking into the specifics of where to invest. So I highlighted, Shumore, which was about 80%. Is it 80%? Yeah, 80% was coming from influencers for the MIV, but what platforms specifically are they investing in? And they are more heavily weighted in TikTok, Red, as well as you can see here, this is across the spectrum of includes Facebook, YouTube, etc. And again, La Roche-Posay which they had a lot on their own social accounts, they were also very heavily weighted. So you'll hear there's quite a band. Some brands are still only like 12, less than 15% on TikTok, and then others are approaching 40+%. So this is, you have to ask yourself, how do you stack up in terms of your performance in relative social channels? And this also includes, even the black at the top includes like print editorial, to get the full spectrum of how that performance is looking. I'm being mindful of time, so I'm going to have to move a little quicker. So then talking about like what exactly are some brands doing? We thought this was a really interesting case study that Lancome did, where they did a product collaboration with a toy brand called Bear Brick. So yes, they did work with over 300 KOLs on this product seeding, which reached 161 million people with 11 million in MIV. But it also, not to dismiss, it also involved a number of celebrities. I had Lily Collins, they had dancers from China's like Dancing with the Stars. So this was very much a full voice, multi-voice campaign that included 2 pop-up shops in Shanghai and Guangzhou that were very, very much promoted by KOLs, inviting their fans and posting. Interesting enough, Red actually accounted for almost 80% of social posts and a majority of the MIV, compared to Weibo, which is where most of the celebrity posts were happening, and that was about 25% of MIV. So really understanding that there is both investment at the celebrity level, but then also with the online seeding with the KOLs and engaging them offline. And this was done in conjunction with Tmall live streaming. So they had both KOLs and celebrities on the promotional calendar. And as shoppers went to the live stream, they could also click on specific products and see the clips that were specific to the product being promoted. So just kind of switching industry gears a bit, wanted to also, because I know in the audience we have both beauty and fashion brands and their agency partners. So wanted to kind of highlight some differences on the fashion side. So again, going back to the theme is how we answer the question of how do brands figure out how much to invest. This is an example of mostly luxury fashion brands. There's some accessible price points and accessory brands. And then we also added Shein, which is a, fast fashion brand. And just to really highlight the difference in terms of the voice investment, right? And most of these brands, media is still 50% of where MIV is coming from. So this includes online media as well. So when I say online media, could be Vogue, Vogue online versus Vogue print. And then you have kind of this range in terms of the influencer side. I have this 18 to 20% of MIV is coming from influencers. And what's remarkable is with Shein, it's actually a lot of it's being done with its owned media, where they have really leveraged the UGC content to really build that community. And that's kind of one of the predictions and things we continue to see for this year and next is brands who really are able to harness community to get the most out of their owned media accounts. So, and then of course, celebrity plays into, particularly for the luxury brands here on this chart, you're seeing that, celebrity part is, for some, it's just single digits, and others, it's well close to high teens, 20+%. So when you think about your strategy, you're like, okay, well, you can only allocate so much for, say, influencer versus celebrity versus media. And it's helpful to sort of see how other brands are taking that approach. And finding the brands that are most applicable to you in terms of scale and size is also something that can be done with MIV as well in absolute dollars. So if we look into how that splits across channels, you'll see here that it's pretty diverse. I'm trying to, let's see, what's the most interesting one? I would say Coach here, they're doing quite a bit on YouTube. That's the red one. That's the one that really stands out. And Shein again here is quite strong, doing a lot on Instagram. I will generally say that this is probably underrepresented on TikTok. One, because again, being able to capture mentions in video, you're always going to lose a certain number across languages, across platforms. So that's something where we predict that will definitely change. If we look at this chart in 6 months from now, TikTok will very much be a larger proportion of MIV for sure. And Carolina, you'll tell me when I need to switch to Q&A, right? Because I still have a lot of slides to go. So we wanted to highlight Prada here, which they actually don't do that much in own, but are quite strong in media as well as celebrity. And so here's some examples of celebrity posts and what the difference is in terms of, here's 1.3 million MIV versus similarly 1.27. But equally high engagement rates from the Prada Spring Summer 23 campaigns. And very much to get an idea of what that singular post may look like and how we compare. So oftentimes when brands are trying to figure out which celebrities they work with, this is analysis that's really helpful because we'll look at historical MIV for different types of brand ambassadors and specific kinds of campaigns and products. And I know we've done this analysis where what was the difference between the celebrity posting on their own social accounts versus the brand posting content with the celebrity. And there's actually pretty stark differences in terms of engagement and how that's valued in terms of MIV. So definitely when your brand is considering a brand ambassador, this is one of a super useful approach and tool in terms of assessing who would be a good brand ambassador and identifying the content types and approaches that will work best. Oops. And then another, so I wanted to highlight one of the TikTok challenges that did very well, which was Fendi's baguette dance. So yes, they enlisted celebrities and KOLs to do the dance, and which resulted in, for the specific hashtag, over 190 million views. And then micro KOLs would also join the bandwagon. So this is just a difference in scale to let you know, like, okay, this particular video was a little over 1,000 likes. So you're talking about 58,000 in renminbi in terms of MIV versus like when it's a top tier actress, for example, and that will be, okay, these are different currencies, 26,000 in MIV. So this is in US dollars and the other one is in renminbi. So yeah, so just to give you a sense of that difference in delta there. And so going on, so this theme of being able to generate user-generated content from campaigns like the Fendi one, Shein also similarly, what is different about their strategy, which was quite different compared to the other brands. So when you look at their influencer, their KOL mix, it's much, much more distributed across micro, mid-tier, and all-star influencers. Whereas all the other brands, they're very heavily weighted towards all-star influencers. So what that is kind of math, but basically if Shein is working primarily with the long tail and all the other brands are working with the top tier, hence why you're seeing a higher proportion of MIV, because what's really important in Shein's case is that they're working with a lot of micro KOLs. And so one of the things we see that is part of that micro long tail KOL flywheel is the affiliate programs that where micro KOLs can opt in to be affiliates. And so this is plugged into all their social and works very well increasingly as that connection between, social content e-commerce is more direct. So just to recap and do some key takeaways here. One, although the charts aren't so obvious, we continue to predict that TikTok will grow for some brands where it may only be a single-digit percentage of MIV. We do expect it to grow pretty rapidly to 20, 30% or more MIV over the coming 12 months. A lot of that does involve making sure that your whole spectrum has the video content flywheels. So that's both leveraging media partnerships. A lot of brands, particularly from the more premium side, are learning to work with the online media houses on ways to create better content, right? So this is one of the best assets if you're not able to do it in-house. Second is having the right resources, community building to really nurture those, to get the product in the hands of micro and macro KOLs. And in many cases, some brands are able to leverage their retail staff, right? So whether this is beauty associates or fashion consultants that are working in the retail stores to become in-house KOLs. So they already have relationships with your customers. Some of them already post, whether it's text messaging or in group chats with your VIPs and your prospective customers. So brands are really putting in programs in place to enable them to create great content. Not just to have like workshops and training, but also thinking about the environment that they create content. Is the lighting in your retail experiences great for social sharing and those aspects? This is particularly important for premium brands, where it's harder to get mass levels of UGC, user-generated content, like you can with someone like Shein, where the product is very affordable. We're particularly seeing this where when there's new collections with luxury brands, they will invite, select VVIP customers for like private live streams to walk through each product and hear the story and, craftsmanship behind the new collection. So this is something that both applies both in terms of social content as well as live streaming. And so really making sure that that becomes a muscle that's trained in-house. It's not something that's just done by a production team. Increasingly, and I didn't have as much time to cover this today, was very much as e-commerce continues to be tied socially with social content. It's not just it's making sure that the walls between performance and brand marketing are increasingly aligned. And oftentimes this is, do you have a broader selection criteria for the kinds of influencers that work for your brand, right? So influencer selection, whether it's for e-commerce or whether it's for branding, can often be a fraught discussion between regional teams, local teams, global teams, right? And so really aligning, okay, what are your brand pillars? Does it fit for the e-commerce KOLs as well as for branding KOLs? So really making sure that that's like a systematic approach that you have to have consistency in the long run, right? The other thing that's part of this is taking that search optimization approach. So, sure, e-commerce and performance marketing teams are very much plugged into what is the keywords that need to perform. And likewise, when your community engagement teams and your social teams are really optimizing your growth on social media platforms, what are the keywords and recommended hashtags when working with KOLs and other voices, right? So working hand in hand across, very much taking those principles that come from the performance marketing side and really bringing it over to that branding side is what will really drive this next stage of social commerce. And one of my favorite topics, and again, I didn't really get to cover today, was really looking, how do you as a brand look at customer retention and voice retention? So when we say voice retention, this is really where ROI comes into play. When you work with a media account or when you work with an influencer account, what is their repeat mention of your brand organically, right? And it's not always that, it's not always pay to play. There actually is this concept of earned across markets. And so very much analysis that we do with a lot of our clients is actually looking at what is the loyalty of a particular voice. So if you do an offline event, you invite 50 KOLs to it. 6 months later, how many of those KOLs are still talking about your brand? right? And how often are they speaking about your brand over that period of time, every month, how many times? So voice retention, meaning the repeat mentions by particular account, also is a driver for ROI, because as you know, depending on who you get the data from, some sources say it takes 8 touch points to convert a customer. Some say it's 15 now. So whether it's 8 or 15, that means your customer today needs multiple mentions of your brand and product before they become a customer. And so that's when voice retention becomes increasingly important. It's been very challenging, of course, for a number of brands the last couple of years, with the whole, iOS, Facebook data changes. And so this increasingly does rely on earned and earned loyalty of these different mentions, particularly when it comes to influencers. So as much as we look at just campaign level performance, another aspect we do with our clients is actually using the data to actually see, okay, what is the long term, whether it's a 3, 6 month, or 12-month period of your voice retention and loyalty, to see if that strategy is something that's paying off, or if it's something that you are only getting if you pay to play. And that has certain implications in terms of your marketing investment and ROI. Great. So I will open up for Q&A. And if you like what we have to share today, please follow us and continue to get our regular insights. And we do you can always reach out as well to inquire if we have industry or sector specific reports. That's done by our data services team in Europe and in China. And happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Kim, for your sharing. And now it's Q&A session. So you can message in the chat box on the right corner to me or Kim directly. And I think I have got one question here from one of our audience here. So what is MIV methodology and how to align across countries and channels?
So that's a really good question. And it is an ongoing process, but the basis of aligning media impact value across countries is we have to look at the respective quantitative and qualitative attributes for each of those markets. So for example, if the CPM costs for a beauty brand in the US is over $100, but in a market like Australia, it may be half of that. That's something we take into account. So one is sometimes we'll look at relative advertising rates. We do look at the broader MIV weighting, which is why I showed the initial charts of how MIV is split across regions. And so to make sure that MIV is somewhat reflective also of general, just like global market share, right? And a broad stroke, not at company level, but at an industry level. And the challenging part is deciding across, say, platforms. So how do we decide that a like on Instagram, is that worth more or less than a like on Weibo, for example, in China? So again, for that, we are taking into account the broader advertising rates, as well as, even something as core as, what are the monthly active users by platform and how is that changing over time? The older a platform is, it has a lot of legacy users, but how many of those are actually active? And so then there's more waiting for fast growing accounts. So fast growing, particularly on platforms like TikTok, where there's a lot more momentum in that audience. And we've over time have to regularly assess the MIV weighting across social media platforms as well. I know that was a broad answer, but if you have, you can always follow up with more specifics on that one.
Thank you, Kim. Do we have any more questions from the audience here? And also, as Kim mentioned, if you would like to know more about our product, you can always visit us at www.launchmetrics.com.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate the time today and have a good day. Oh, we have more?
No, yeah. But if you have more, please feel free to contact us. Thank you guys, and thank you, Kim, for sharing. Have a great day. Bye-bye.